Hello friends and welcome back. I'm Enterprise Architecture. We are back here playing more modded Vintagestory. Now I have updated the mods list below, so you should have the latest and greatest there. Namely, we did update the swords mod to a later version just to get some compatibility issues fixed up based on what we did in the last episode. Today, we are changing our attention a little bit to go back to working on our library. Now, it's going to be well into spring and summer before we can really do the hard work on it. But today, I at least want to start getting some more of it framed out. And that means we need to do a whole bunch of quarrying, and we need to start setting up a little bit of figuring out how we want this to be shaped. So we're probably going to do a little bit of chiseling and start scraping together the basic rough design elements that we want to use. So with no further ado, let's dive right in. So we are back here in the main building where I'm keeping all of our building supplies, and I went ahead and moved my bedroom up to upstairs in this space here, which I think will work really well for us in the long run, just because it gives us a little more space going up and downstairs from our little inn area and makes me less exposed for people just randomly walking into my bedroom where they're coming into the inn. I also went ahead and spent some time trying to chisel out the railings a little bit here, and this one's still a little janky. I need to go and add a few more pixels to it, but I did this while watching Kurosawa's stream. Anybody who watches Kurosawa might have seen me in there complaining about biting off more than I could chew, but I do think these railings are starting to come together once I get that little issue fixed up a bit. So this is all working out for us. Now today we need to grab up a hammer, which looks like we already have our hammer. And we also need to grab up our splitter plugs so that we can go start working on chiseling out more of our quarry. So our quarry is over here by our berries. And this is where we've just been digging out the mountainside as much as we can to be able to have access to large amounts of stone that we can then use for this build. So if I come over here, I should just be able to add my splitter plugs directly in here. Just like that, 5 and 6. And then I can climb up this ladder and go to the top and then put these into the back, and that will allow us to split off a large chunk of stone here. The only issue, of course, is that, it looks like this is not a nice even piece like the ones we had been using. So yeah, we'll probably need to build this back up on the backside to make this usable for those purposes here. That's going to be easy enough because we can just start chunking off sections of the back of this one as well, and then start using that to be part of this. So I think for now, I might just start adding bits to this until it can be used as a solid block. All right, so that will indeed be a relatively small slab here for this piece, but then we can go back to the front of this and start cutting more slabs out very, very easily and quickly here. There we go. Somewhere in here, we've got our big slab. I just have to make sure we get all of our plugs. That is only 142 andesite. That's not great. You can see here I have been making up a bunch of the cobblestone and the big ashlar blocks out of what I did have on hand, but we're going to need a bunch more of these huge stone slabs if we're going to make any progress at all. So let me keep working on this, and I will be back in a boop. All right, so we have all of these slabs of andesite now, and in addition, I have 8 more of these 216 block slabs all the way back upstairs here in a container waiting for us to use. So we should be good to go for at least a little while, but it is going to require a lot of this to be able to proceed. So now we can grab up our chisel and start making our actual blocks out of it. So all we do is sit here and right click on it with our hammer in our offhand, and that will start making bricks. All right, that is a lot of bricks. Let's start loading them up into some of our storage crates that we have here laying around for now, at least until we are ready to start making things out of them. And as I mentioned before in the last episode, we do need to make up a bit more mortar. So I was cooking up a bunch of quicklime, which may or may not be done at this point, honestly. We can go have a look here. We were using our electric stove. Oh, and yeah, the last of it is done. If we need to, we can even make a bunch more because now quicklime is really, really accessible since we can literally just throw it on the stove. That's great. All right, so we are going to need that mortar to make this up. I thought we had a bunch of mortar here Ah yes, here we go, 502 mortar. We'll grab all of that up, and with that we can make a whole bunch more of these ashlar blocks. And we are going to need a boatload because we have only just done this one room, and that was basically using, what, like 4 stacks, 5 stacks of those blocks? So we're going to need to redo that. And also, I'm leaving the cobblestone floor because we just made up a boatload of cobblestone and I didn't have any better use for it. So I'm gonna probably end up adding some decoration to that, but for now, cobblestone floors will do perfectly fine. So let's use these blocks to make up even more of our andesite ashlar bricks, just like this. There we go, real quick, real easy to get these done. All right, so with those in hand, let's just swap out to be able to get our lantern and we can start building. So I do want to kind of frame this out and leave some spots where I think the windows are going to go, similar to where those are, but I want floor to ceiling windows when these are done. So I do want to leave some pretty big gaps here to put those in. But I'm just going to get most of this framed out here all the way around, and we will be back here in, I don't know, honestly, in real time it's probably going to be an hour, but for you all, it should just be a second. Now, while I'm going all through this, let's talk a little bit about the design concept here. So originally, I had planned to have a giant courtyard in the middle with these various buildings wrapping around, with this section here and that section here being the main library area, and probably having some study areas around these corners on each side. But also the teleporters would be in the back of each of these rooms as we find more and more teleporters that we can then use to redirect where it is that we want to be able to go. We do have the teleporter relocator mod, so that means we can move those around and put them to new locations that we want to teleport to. So that was kind of the plan, the design idea I was going with. And I wanted this to be a couple of floors tall. So I think what we will do is probably have some like grand balconies coming from this side, sort of in this little area here, that'll look over the square that's going to be in the middle once that's done. So that's kind of the plan. Now I know I want the bottom floor to at least be these stone bricks, but I'm going to use some actual regular andesite stone to kind of complement that as well, so that we can do some chiseling that'll look nice and kind of make this pop out a little bit. I have some ideas for some windows that I'm particularly interested in. Now, one thing I had been going back and forth on is whether or not to actually make these real rooms or not. Obviously during winter, it's useful to have them be rooms because they'll hold heat in better, but realistically, I don't think I need to be attached to the notion that these have to be solid walled rooms. There's no real reason to if I'm just building this for aesthetic's sake. And what really put me over the tipping point is I saw Kurazar had not been building all of his buildings as closed rooms and instead just playing with the design for the sake of having a design. So I might go and do that, taking from his lead and using that as a good excuse to not necessarily have to have this be closed in. That also means that we are no longer stuck with the room size cap. Normally you can only have rooms that are 14 by 14 by 14. And that, in these sorts of block terms, is not actually very large, as it turns out. So that would give us the opportunity to make, say, this section an entirely large room unto itself, which would be, I think, a much better looking design than if it was not, if it actually had to have these doors in between. So we might try playing with that instead. And maybe we just have small segments of this that are closed in rooms and the rest will be open. That might make for a really interesting looking plan. And it also would mean we have more opportunity to have like very large open balconies on this second floor, or even if we want to do a third floor, maybe we have very, very tall series of bookshelves that kind of are going up almost to the roof, or maybe we have separate floors and a gallery down between them that you kind of look down into. I don't know. Still playing with the idea and concept based on some of the other libraries I've been to over the years. Alright, so there we go. We have all of our walls built. That took a extremely long time for me to get all of these blocks made, and we had to make up a bunch more mortar to do it as well. We are almost even out of our slaked lime, so we're probably gonna have to go make a bunch more of that so that we can even keep up with all of the rest of this we need to still fill in. But I think this is going to be roughly the size and shape of the ground floor here, which is basically the size of this room. Although now that I look at it, I am tempted to go up just one more level, even if it costs about 1 billion bricks to get there, because I think we want vaulted, feeling like they're very soaring sorts of roofs. So maybe I'll tear out the roof of this space and put everything up just one more level. So let me go boot that into place. Yeah, so I think that feels a little bit better. This is starting to feel a little less claustrophobic, and I think it'll start to open up a little bit more, because in here, if we do as I was talking about before and make this so that it is open and not actually a sealed room, we'll have these giant balconies looking down over this area as well, probably from like right about here. So this will feel even more open as it starts to tower over this area. So I think this will work pretty well for us. Let me go and add another layer all the way around the rest of this, and then we can get started on flushing that out a little bit more. Okay, so I want to start thinking about complementary textures that will go along with these andesite ashlar blocks. Now, the aged wood that's around the windows and the doors is actually like browner than the green of the actual aged wood. And this is one of my big regrets, I think, in the build so far, is that I don't feel like this aged wood looks like the actual doors that we have. What does actually look like a pretty good match, as it turns out, is these oak logs once you've stripped them. So that's a standard oak log. And then we have these stripped oak logs. And if I put this down like right here, you'll see this starts to give us a nice grain and texture pattern that's a little bit lighter than our doors, but I think it's the same basic coloring, even though it's a like hue off. So I think this will work pretty well for us for making our floors and whatnot across the rest of this. Now, I have yet to determine how I want to do this. That is, I think I'm probably going to chisel these down, and I think that this would actually look a lot better as a slab sort of affair. Or I might just use this as a veneer on top of another block, because the ends of these actually, for the actual log texture, I think is really super ugly. I don't love any of that. But this veneer for like planking with these stripes, I think could look really, really, really good. Let me put down another one so you can kind of see how this is starting to like come together. Yeah. So this sort of a texture I think will work really well and give us a nice rustic floor feel that we can use all around this. We can also probably use this for other things that we want to do. So for instance, all of the various rails and things like that, I think could really benefit from having stripped oak logs. Now, this presents both an opportunity and a problem. Number one, the opportunity here is we can start expanding our oak forest that we were building over here to have more oak logs in it. So we have a small little oak area. And the other benefit here, of course, is that oak is going to give us a lot of blocks per single tree. So if I cut down this one single oak tree, it'll probably take all the leaves that are nearby as well. But from that one tree, I believe I already had a single stack of oak logs in my inventory. So whatever we get out of this, it's going to be that whole amount minus one stack. So let's finish gathering up all these just dozens and dozens of sticks and logs everywhere, all the way over here. Oh, it did look like it topped a couple of the other trees, but roughly what are we talking about? That's about 50 logs we got just from cutting that one down. Let me cut down the rest of these and we'll see where we land. But I expect that we will have enough to do a significant amount of the upstairs balcony off of just what we've already got planted. And then we will still have to wait for all the rest of these seedlings that are planting themselves, thanks to mods, into the ground and become more full trees. And I don't know, it'll sprout in a day, but it'll probably be a week or so before we get all of them actually growing. Okay, so assuming that I did have one stack on me already, that is a boatload of stacks of oak logs. We've got 7 full stacks and half left over. That should be, hopefully, a decent amount to start putting a dent in this build. Now, we will have to strip all of these logs, of course, and I will need a thing to store them in somewhere around here. I have some more of those storage containers from before. That's an aged log. Where are those storage containers that I left? Ah, there we go. One aged crate, please. This will hold all of our logs while we are doing all of our work on them. Now, winter is, of course, the absolute worst time to do any building in this game because you just can't see a darn thing to know what your textures are actually going to look like here. But I think we're at least getting a feel for shape, and that is also important. So here I've got our oak planks, or excuse me, debarked oak logs laid down here to give us this lovely ground texture here. Kind of looks like planks. And then I do have an overhang here of about 2 blocks on the sides to match where the overhang is on the courtyard in the middle here. So just this central gallery where all of our bookshelves are going to go, that has an overlap on the inside here and an overhang on the outside here. So I think I'll build up underneath there, so it'll be a nice little stepped ridge underneath to kind of look like it's being supported properly. That also gives us a little bit more room to work up here on these sides here. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks on the inside here, and then there'll be a nice little railing here. The other side will have a little bit more space. This actually overlooks a bit of the courtyard, which I think is going to look really, really nice when it's done, but without, in either case, actually overlapping it, because we might probably do a skylight in here so that we still have lots of natural light coming into this area. Now, I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then it's going to be time to start laying out our stairs, because we need to be able to go between floors, and we don't want to just use ladders. What kind of a library have you been to where you just use ladders? That would be silly. So we're going to do stairs. I think what we're going to do is, since we have a teleportation room over here, we might do a big stairwell, like a grand entrance on this side here that goes up half the level and then turns and goes up the rest, so that you come into this section here as sort of an entry hall, and then match it on the opposite side in that building so it's exactly the same, so that you can get up from either corner rather than having to go up through all 4 corners. Now, to connect these 2 sides of the building, we need some sort of a causeway that's going to make it sort of easy to get from one side to the other. So I'm starting to experiment with this just a little bit here, and I think I want to have some arches on either side. And this will be instead of what we did on that far side there, where we have the 3 little doors. We'll make one big arch going across this, and I think that's going to be how this is going to look. And I think I'll then match it on the other side eventually when I get done. But for this to work, I might need to move this around a little bit, because these windows now are a little shorter than I'd like, and I just need some shuffling to kind of make this really pop the way that I want it to. So we're going to want to actually chisel these down a little bit to kind of make them look like actual arches and not just big chunky blocks here. So we're going to start with our big piece and slowly work our way down to the smaller and smaller chisel sizes until we get sort of just the diagonal pieces that we want here, just a little at a time until it's notched to how we want it. Once we have that done, we will be ready to start actually turning these into nice, graceful, sweeping curves that'll make this look nice and organic, which is what we're aiming for here. With this roughed out, we definitely want to go back and use our custom chisel size that will allow us to actually be able to pick off a row at a time. That just makes this go a little bit smoother here for how we need to be able to start thinking about this, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of tinker with this. And sometimes I click on the wrong block, but we will get this sorted out. All right, we're getting pretty close here. This arch is kind of doing what I want it to do. We might play with this a little bit because I want it to be a little thicker on the bottom. Right now, it just feels like it's way too thin there. And if we're gonna keep it over top of the window like that, I do want it to be able to sit out just a little bit. So we're gonna redesign this just a hair. And that looks much closer to what I was going for. So that sticks out just a little bit further there and then still smoothly joins the top piece. So we just need to take a copy of that with our pantograph, and we should be able to paste this right back onto that block where we had the other one. And we just need to rotate that around. And we just have to repeat that process with each piece of this. There is actually a teeny tiny little sliver in there in between the blocks as well that just makes up one tiny little edge, so we probably will have to add a block just to be able to make that. Oops, I pasted or copied one I should have pasted. Let's try this again. There we go. Rotate that around. There we go. Now we're getting this together. And then we just need these last little chunks here to get this in place. And then rotate it. Yeah, so this is generally the idea of what we want here. I made it so that everything also came down by half a block so that we could just put slabs in between the actual curved sections, and it still gives it that little bit of a edge there at the bottom that just makes it look a little lower. So with that done, now what we need to do is grab up our andesite stone and carve ourselves up some railings here. So we're going to start with just a single piece so that we can carve the railing here, and then we'll copy and paste it all the way back around. Let's give ourselves a little bit of room to work here, and now we can get chiseling. I think what we're aiming for here is going to be something not too dissimilar from how we carved the railings for all of the wood pieces, but I want it to be a lot chunkier than what we did for that one. So I think the top of the railing we want to be 6 voxels wide, and then we're going to want to notch out the edges here. I think we're going to do a center post would be the simplest way to make this sort of work, so we can kind of pull the edges out of this. But I do want to make sure this is that 6? Yeah, we're just going to come in 1 on each side because the actual post itself will be 4 wide. Whoops, I'm going to throw that on the ground. The center post will be 4 wide, and then we will make the top just a little thicker than that. So let's go ahead and add just a little back here on the top and fall down. Yeah, that's going to be a problem for us here. I'm always falling off of things. I think chisel blocks, when you shift to crouch, you still don't stay standing on top of them. You'll still fall right off of them for whatever reason. And with some dirt to kind of support us a little bit, there we go. Now we can put this together. Obviously, 1 voxel is going to be way too thin for the top of that railing. Maybe we try 3 or 4 to start? No, 3 probably I think will look a little bit better and still be just as chunky as we want. There we go. And now what I think we'll do is maybe just notch the top edge here, just so it makes it look a little bit rounder at the very top. Well, maybe 4 would look better if we are going to notch the edge. Nope, that's not where that goes. There we go. Okay, great. We'll pull that out and pull that out. Perfect. Okay, that's starting to look suitably good for an actual piece that's going to be a top of a railing. I'm just going to keep throwing that on the ground over and over again. And now let's grab up our chisel here and get the big chunky chisel to remove these sections here so that we can carve into place the center post of this railing as well. So just get this slowly notched just like that. Okay, yeah, that's going to look pretty good. And now we just need to carve out the rest of this. Let's see here. Yeah, we'll grab our 2x2 and right here. Yeah, that'll work. Great. And I wonder if these would look better if they were round as well. Maybe we'll give it a little bit of roundness to it so that it doesn't look, too boxy. Not that I'm not a fan of boxy, but there's a time and a place for it. And yeah, something like that. Let's go ahead and pull off just the edges here to make it a little round. Maybe we don't go all the way down with these edges though. Maybe we just leave a little on the bottom just to kind of make it look like it's rooted a little better. Maybe that'll be the way to go. And maybe I'll make the whole base a little bigger if I think that it needs it, but I don't mind these being a little skinny. I just don't want them to be super skinny. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's make some copies of this and see how that works together. Yeah, I think that'll totally work. I might come back and make them a little thicker at some point, but I think that these will do a very, very fine job. Oh, I should not have put that one there because now when I break this, it's going to turn it into just bits and pieces instead of solid blocks, but whatever, not a big deal. We can afford it. We have lots and lots and lots of actual pieces of stone, and we can always come back and carve more stone out of those giant slabs if we need. We have all of the chisels necessary to carve either blocks, bricks, or I think it's polished blocks we can also do with those. So we have lots of options here. And there is our finished causeway. Now that we've chiseled in a little bit of an arch, put the windows in and everything, I think this is starting to look really good. Oh, but we do have a gap there from the chiseling on the other side. I'm gonna need to come back and fix that. Not because we need to hold in the heat necessarily. Apparently we also need to light it up because we have monsters inside. So that's going to be a bit of a problem. Well, friends, we have once again come to the end of another episode here. It is just taking a really long time to get any of this building done. So I'm going to slowly pick away at this and an episode here, an episode there, and do some other adventures in between. We probably also will need to do a little bit of building off camera here. And honestly, a lot of this might need to actually wait till spring because this snow is just really getting in the way of the build. I can't see what I'm doing, and it makes it really difficult. And also night lasts a lot longer, so I don't have as many daylight hours. So we probably will have to put a pause on some of this until it gets around to at least 2 months in game time from now. But I'm still gonna try and do what I can in between episodes. For now, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends!